We hope you're having a fantastic day. We get a number of questions on a regular basis about copy fees and how that's handled. And one of the things that has changed over the course of the last several years is in regards to when a patient makes a medical records request. And that's when pretty much the wheels fall off and everything gets to be a bit more complicated. And that's because HIPAA addressed this and actually issued some clarifying statements more recently in the last couple of years that really clearly define how you can charge and what you can charge for medical records to a patient or to a patient's personal representative. Now, let's get that out of the way right out of the gate. A personal representative of a patient would be someone who is able to act on their behalf illegally in regards to medical services. In other words, somebody who can make medical decisions for the patient. That would be a parent, a guardian, or somebody that has medical power of attorney. That wouldn't be an attorney. However, what you may find is attorneys will send you a medical records release that is actually specifically signed by the patient on behalf of the patient, and then the records are sent to the attorney. In those cases, the request is being made by the patient, and everything that I'm getting ready to talk about really applies in those cases as well. So we're talking about cases where the patient is making a medical records request. And again, this is where it gets complicated, but HIPAA has really clearly defined some things. And for years, we would say, use the state fee, copy fee list that's out there that we've given out time and time again. But really what this clarification does for through HIPAA is allows the patient to be able to obtain their medical records more easily and at a more affordable price for the patient, not for the doctor. In this case, what happens is when a patient makes a request, you're required to give them their medical records at basically the cost that it takes to copy them. That does not include any additional costs in the retrieval of those medical records if they happen to be off-site, but instead just the costs specifically related to making the copies. So if all of your records are in paper format and you're giving the patient their medical records, at that case, you can do one of really three things. The first thing is you can calculate the exact cost that it takes for that particular copy request that you've received. So you could determine the cost of the papers, if you have to pay a per copy fee for your copy machine, the exact time of labor spent by your specific personnel for that particular task. And again, it can't be for the retrieval. It's only for the copies. The exact cost of the actual postage that you're going to be sending, and you have to do that each and every single time and be able to memo that out and lay it out to make sure that it's covered. You can also instead take a similar approach and say this is the exact cost that is typically associated. In other words, you come up with an average for your office. And although the law says that you can use Illinois' copy fee schedule, give you some serious caution to that, because most likely the only time that you can use Illinois' copy fee schedule in that case to determine the average is if that copy fee schedule is reasonably close to your actual costs. So in other words, just because it is higher doesn't mean you can use it. In fact, they have specifically ruled against doctors and hospitals, providers, if you will, in cases where they just used the state's copy fee schedule, and when it was not more closely aligned with their actual costs. So what we strongly encourage in these cases is go ahead and do the calculation, figure out exactly what it would cost on average to be able to copy medical records for a patient, and then utilize that expense. Now, remember, you can't charge a handling fee or other superfluous fees, or even, again, the fee for the cost in relation to going and obtaining those records, instead just for the copies and the exact cost to ship it off to them, whatever that cost may be. The last is what we're seeing more often, and what really our doctors see in their offices more frequently as well, which is if your medical records are all in electronic format. In other words, you maintain them in electronic format and they're requested in electronic format, then to the extent that you're able to fulfill those requests, you're required to fulfill those requests. And again, in those cases, you can only charge the cost that it takes to be able to get those fees to the patient in the electronic medium format that they've requested. So if they request in PDF and your electronic medical record software can produce those records in PDF format, then in that case, then you have to oblige them and give it to them in that format. Now, that means that you can charge for the exact time that it would take your staff to do that, for the exact cost of the media, whether it be a CD or a jump drive, and whichever medium you choose to be able to transfer that electronically. Or if you have a patient portal, obviously in that case, then there's probably going to be little to no charge because you're going to just have to notify them. But your medium and also the cost to mail it to them unless they come and pick that up from you physically. And then of course there would be no shipping charges then that you would be able to administer in those cases. And so you have to know exactly what those costs are, and then you could charge that amount. Or what HIPAA has said, what HHS has said and given guidance has said, or you can just charge $6.50. And so you can go through the iterations on a case-by-case basis and calculate the exact dollar amounts. You can come up with an average or simply just charge $6.50. I know this isn't going to be popular, and our doctors are sometimes going to say, but it does cost us time, and it does cost us energy, and it does cost us money to retrieve those medical records. But HIPAA really does lay this out. They want the patients to have the cleanest access available. And then what's happening is other entities then are utilizing the patient's ability to be able to request those records on their behalf. As long as it is the patient making the request, you still have to abide by what HHS has indicated in the HIPAA rules, even though it may be being mailed by their attorney. As long as that request is being made by the patient and for the patient, even if it's going to the attorney, you still have to oblige and follow those specific criteria. So do an exact calculation, do an average calculation as long as it's real. And the last one is, or just simply charge $6.50. It's one of those three methods to be able to get them their medical records according to HIPAA and according to HHS guidelines. Hopefully you find this information valuable for your office, and we'll catch you next week.